Hi, my name's Bruce Quinn, and I consider myself an advanced amateur working with Zoom and OBS Studio. I have a nice camera, a Sony ZV-1. I know the basics of OBS Studio, so I can use a green screen and manipulate it. I can adjust the contrast and saturation and framing of my camera. And I can make recordings with multiple backgrounds or foregrounds right in OBS Studio. However, there's one problem that had started to bother me, which is when I use OBS Studio for my camera and my video, it creates a delay of 300 or 400 milliseconds on the way to Zoom, which I use frequently for business meetings, literally every day. And a client mentioned a few days ago that they noticed a mismatch in the sync between my own voice and my video coming through my multiple component system. So I spent literally a week figuring out different ways to try to make the audio sync between OBS Studio, my camera, my microphone, and Zoom. And it turns out it's very hard to find a solution that works. There's a very sophisticated solution called NDI, but you have to put lots of apps and add-ins and virtual cables all over the place. So I wanted to find something simpler. If you are recording directly within OBS Studio, there is a way to slow down the audio to match the video. You look at the audio box, you use the gear function, you go to advanced settings, and there's a setting called sync offset. 200, 300, 400 milliseconds, you see what works. But that doesn't help you when you're live on a Zoom call. Finally, I got a single app called VOICEMEETER that will do what I want, but there were about 50 ways to do it wrong that I stumbled with because I don't have any AV training. And I'm going to show you a way that's fairly simple to understand that actually works. In this video, I'm going to work through the process with graphics. Then I'm going to go back and work through the process again with the live VOICEMEETER program so you actually watch it like a software demo. So with that, let's go to the graphics. So here we are. You've got your camera and your microphone. Microphone goes straight into Zoom. That's basically instantaneous. But the camera goes through software processing on my computer called Imaging Edge for Sony. And then it goes into OBS Studio, and there's more image processing, and it goes out, but it gets to Zoom 200, 300, 400 milliseconds late. So you have the problem, there's this 300 millisecond delay, depending on your system, going into Zoom. Well, you can't speed that up, but what you can do is slow down the microphone a little bit. And what I developed is a system where I use donationware called VOICEMEETER, and I can insert a 300 or 400 millisecond delay there, whatever fits best. And then a virtual cable is what Zoom sees. So instead of Zoom connecting direct to your microphone, Zoom thinks that your microphone is this virtual cable coming out of VOICEMEETER. What I would rather be showing you, this is the humorous part, is that OBS Studio has got an output for OBS virtual camera. Zoom sees it, that exists, great. There is no output for OBS virtual microphone. It doesn't exist. So that's not an option. I can't show you that. I'd love to show you software that looks like this. It's the Idiot's Virtual Mic app. You pick your mic, Windows Realtek mic, you pick a delay, drop-down menu for 300 milliseconds, and then Zoom would see this thing called Idiot's Virtual Mic app, and that would be your mic, and you'd be done. However, I'm going to show you this software, which is called VOICEMEETER. I'm sure it's really, really good software, but if you don't understand it, it can be very confusing, and you probably don't have anybody that can give you instructions, so you have to figure it out for yourself. So we're going to jump now to the website for VB Audio. There it is. So this is the home. It's vbaudio.com. And you go to the audio apps. You're going to download the simplest virtual cable. It's just a single virtual cable, not multiple ones. So download that. And you're going to download VOICEMEETER. They have different kinds of VOICEMEETER that are more sophisticated. You can get the very simplest VOICEMEETER. That's what I use. And remember, these are both donationware, so they look for a donation from you. So now we're looking at VoiceMeeter, and this is a pop-up menu inside of VoiceMeeter that we're going to use. And I swear to God, I found 50 ways to do this wrong. Either there was no synchronization, or there was an echo, or there was bad sound. Lots of ways to do this wrong. But let's explain VoiceMeeter. And this is my idiot's guide to VoiceMeeter. You really have 4 panels here. The first one is hardware input. Could be a microphone. The second one is another audio input. For example, it could be music or a laugh track or something. We're not going to use that. The third thing is called VoiceTech Virtual Input. I don't understand it, and we're not going to use that either. Then on the right, you get to the outputs from VoiceMeeter, of which there is A on the left and B on the right. You're going to find we're not going to use B. It'll mess you up. The A input has got 2 different hardware outputs, like you could send it once to your speakers and once to your headphones, for example, but we're just going to use one output. That's a virtual cable. Finally, if you click on this box called AB, or if you push this button called Menu and Settings, you get this pop-up, which I call number 5. And that's where you find a little box called Monitoring Synchro Delay, and you set it for 200, 300, 400 milliseconds, whatever works. So let's work through this one step at a time, but pretty quickly. In hardware input, this is a drop-down menu. It's going to be your microphone. If you've got a choice for an MME microphone, pick that. It's a little bit slower. You want it to be slower. Now, this box has become your microphone. Where does it go? It's going to go either to A or B. Only check A, do not check B. Now there are a couple other settings here. There's a thing called IntelliPan, that's voice quality. You don't have to touch it. I tried moving it upwards just a little bit, but don't worry about that. There's a thing called audibility. I don't use it, leave that at 0. And this is your volume output. I would leave it at a neutral setting. Now we're going to panel 2, which is another hardware input. The first panel is your microphone. The second panel you're not going to use, so don't put anything there. Leave A and B to nothing or turned off and set the volume to 0. The next thing is this panel called Virtual Input VB Audio VoiceMeeter VAIO. You can't change that. You can't do anything with it, so you leave that alone. I leave AB off and I set the volume to 0. And believe me, some of this stuff is I learned the hard way. If you do it this way, I'm an idiot, but it works. Now, we're over to the output panels. The A output panel is called Hardware Out, and the B panel is called Virtual Out. However, you are not going to use the B panel. You're going to go here to the A1 button. That's an input to output A. Remember, output A1 could be your headphone, output A2 could be your speakers or something like that. So A1, select to be cable input virtual audio virtual cable. Do not use this thing called VoiceMeeter input. Do not use that. Use cable input up here. That's the separate independent cable that you installed from the earlier software. The audio here can be neutral, or you can raise it a little bit for a little extra volume. That's up to you. Now that you've done that, click on the AB box or use menu/settings and you'll get this pop-up, which I've shown on the left. The only thing you need is this thing called Monitoring Synchro Delay, which I've enlarged. And you can set it for any number you want, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, press return. And the A1 output, which is this virtual cable, will be delayed by 200 or 300 or 400 milliseconds. So you are now actually done. So this is what everything will look like. Note that the B is unchecked in every column. So this output column B that you do not want to use should be a dead column anyway. We've just set the volume to 0 for safety. And this is just a graphic that I'm going to use on my blog that goes along with this, and it sort of gives you everything that we did in one somewhat messy graphic. So with that, I'm going to go to a different approach, and I'm going to show you this stuff in VoiceMeeter. So we are simply going to repeat what you've already seen, but if you're like me, it may stick better the second time. We start over here, we look at hardware input. It's set to MME microphone Realtek. That's a typical Windows name for a microphone. And you can actually see my microphone working here. It's monitoring it. I'm not using Zoom. I'm recording in OBS, so nobody is listening to the VoiceMeeter software, but it is recording or listening to my microphone. I've got A. Oh, we want to uncheck B, so only A is checked. We'll leave the volume slider at neutral. This little voice quality thing, we can slide down or up a little bit. Don't have to worry about it. Audibility, don't worry about it. Leave it at 0. Now we're coming to the second column in the software, hardware input. We don't want a second input. We've got one microphone, we're happy. So we select nothing there. We unselect the outputs and we set the volume at 0. Now we're at the virtual channel. I don't know what that does, but I'm going to set A and B at 0, and I'm going to set this volume at 0. Now we're at the outputs. Remember, we're never going to use the B output. The volume is turned down to 0, and all of these Bs are dead. So there shouldn't be any noise in the B channel. In the A channel, we're going to go to A1, and we're going to set it to MME cable input VB audio virtual cable. Remember, as I told you the first time, do not use VoiceMeeter. It won't work. Use this one, cable input. And when you get to Zoom later, you're going to have a thing called cable output, virtual cable output, and that's going to be your microphone. Now, the only thing we have left to do is actually set the delay, which is what we were here for. And I'm going to either click Menu and System Settings, or I can just click in the AB box here. And the only thing we have to use in this box is the monitoring synchro delay. Here I've got it set at 200 milliseconds. You do this by trial and error at a couple different settings and see what works. 200, 300, 400 milliseconds. If you have less than 100 milliseconds delay, you probably can't see it for most amateur purposes. So that was everything. Let me go back to you. So in closing, this will let you use VoiceMeeter to do nothing but take in your microphone, delay it by a few hundred milliseconds, and put it out in an independent virtual cable, which Zoom can see as a microphone input. Other things you may hear about, there is a monitoring function in OBS, and there is a delay function in OBS. However, those only work inside of OBS. So if you're streaming inside of OBS or if you're recording inside of OBS, the OBS audio delay will work for you. It's working for me right now making this recording. But if you use the monitoring function and virtual cables that go outward to Zoom, you can do that to carry the audio signal from OBS to Zoom, but it will not be impacted by the audio delay. It skips the audio delay. There is a much more complicated system called NDI. In order to use this, you have to put special apps inside of OBS and set them the right way. Then you have to download NDI software. Then you need virtual cables to connect OBS to NDI and NDI to Zoom. So you're doing a lot of different software, multiple steps, 12, 14 steps, just to slow down your sound, which you can do with what I've demonstrated today. So I'm going to close back on the original slide, which is here. We've taken your camera through OBS to Zoom. We have not done anything with Zoom today. Your microphone is going to VoiceMeeter, and we have dumbed down VoiceMeeter so it does nothing except see your microphone on the left and output it on a virtual cable A1 on the right. And we've done that pop-up box to give a 300 millisecond delay. And that should work for you when you're in Zoom meetings. Now, if you've got an informal Zoom meeting, if there are 20 people on the call and you're a little talking head, you probably don't need to worry about the audio delay. But if you're in a one-to-one job interview or you're doing something serious and professional in Zoom, then this extra step of going to VoiceMeeter probably could be worthwhile for you. Thank you very much for sticking with me, and good luck.